Resident Evil 6, the black sheep of the family. This game was pretty divisive, to put it nicely, so much so that Capcom really had a knee-jerk reaction to steer away from this advanced third-person action shooter, to more back to the basic structure with 7 and then to tackle the classic remakes to keep the name safe in the public eye. It's both good and bad this all happened. We got a resurgence to the franchise, but the amazing combat that they've been building upon since RE4 was just abandoned. I know deep gameplay might not be for everyone, and only select few actually understood what the game was doing so damn well at the time, even to this day even. So, let me show you the way, to hopefully see why this game is one of the best to us action fans. But first, this is Combat Overview. In the series I go over the general controls for the game's main mechanical mechanics, who or what we use those tools on, and then seeing how it all comes together. A bit more in depth, but that's what we do. So we all know how shooters work, and we all know the basics of what RE4 started, I'm sure. Can aim and fire. And now we can move while ADSing. Next level stuff, right? The first thing you'll learn, landing shots in specific areas actually affects the enemy, and in different ways if you can believe it. The go-to headshot. Small targets, so it's a bit tricky to hit, especially on these wobbly moving zombies. It's a stagger when landed, but there's a chance to crit, taking them out right then and there just like in the classics. Then the arms. This is a stagger point as well, and this has them turn around. And legs, of course, to trip, stopping them in the tracks. Body shots doesn't stagger from what I can tell, and is just easy damage since it's a big target, compared to those small moving limbs for distinct follow-ups. So there's a few additions in 6. We got an instant dash slide attack, so as you move forward, hold X and immediately press L2. And yeah, this slide attack is considered a hit. Same way as an arm or headshot, how it'll stun the enemy. Also, if you have a little trouble lining this up, you can aim at them first. This will help center you. Then you can go for that slide. Yeah, there's more uses to it, but we'll circle back around. Then this quick shot by tapping aim and fire at the same time. It's a fast check option. It automatically lands a shot on a nearby enemy. This also stuns them the same way a precision shot would, so it keeps them still to land a head or another limb shot easier. Now it sounds kinda weird, game is built on landing skilled shots, but this kinda skips over that. Don't worry, it'll make sense later. Okay, so these specific points stagger enemies, stunning them, which opens them up for melee attack follow-ups or some crowd control. And before we go any further, yes, we still have hype wrestling moves here, and everyone has different ones. Okay, so there's a 2-hit system to set up called a coup de grace. You're fully invulnerable during this, and it can be done to both regular and special enemy types. So a headshot into an arm hit counts as 2 full contacts, setting up for an instant melee takedown, the coup de grace. Or a quick shot into an instant dash slide attack. Each is a hit and sets it up as well. You can even do 2 slides to set it up too. So to see the difference, one single hit with slide, quick shot, or hitting a specific limb gets you a powerful crowd control follow-up. But combining 2 of these stagger hits sets up a coup de grace. Now legs. You gotta shoot each one back to back to floor them. It doesn't set up a CDG, but it's still in line of the 2-hit system so you can stomp them. Also about that stomp, you gotta pay attention where you stand because your positioning matters. Line up with their melon heads, that's a 1-hitter quitter. But if you stomp their chest, they live and you gotta stomp them again, using more time and stamina, which gives surrounding enemies the chance to close in, and now you have less stamina to work with, which means you can't conserve ammo as well. And yeah, it's all a domino effect, and your decision making really does matter. Now if you get yourself in a tight spot, let's go over your defensive options. To start off simple, if you get knocked down, just hold X to break your fall and roll back on your feet. And we have a counter. Enemies have multiple attacks, both close and far range, and they cannot be parried from what I can tell, which is pretty sick. So as they're winding up and about to hit you, press R2. This will counter and do this automatic follow-up attack. You can even counter during reload animations. This can't be ADSing though if you want to counter, because R2 is to fire, so it's a counter, so little detail to know. There is tech with aiming and countering though. So when you attempt to counter right, slightly mistiming it will have you do a melee attack, which is pretty laggy, and yeah, you're most likely going to get hit because of that. So while aiming, let go of it, having you drop your weapon, and as this is happening and a bit after it's down as well, you can't melee attack. Right now I'm trying to melee, but it won't come out till the animation fully plays out. But you can still press, well, more like mash R2 to counter during this window. And like we saw earlier, counters do cancel animations. So what this does is set up a mash buffer window for easier counters. Pretty sick tech. But the trade-off is you gotta stay still a bit since aiming lowers your mobility and all. It's worth learning, but not necessary. Can for sure save yourself from crowd since counters do have iframes on it and can hit nearby enemies too. Okay, so we can dodge in this game as well. So while aiming, press X to evade, and neutral press has you duck. Duck to avoid swipes from zombies, duck to avoid thrown objects and projectiles. Pretty cool. Now adding a direction to that will have you dodge. From what I can tell, this has some solid iframes on it. Either way, it's a solid reposition option to evade attacks. Can roll forward to get past their attack while moving in. Can dodge backwards to avoid an up close attack and answer back, or to the sides as well. And this will lower your hitbox too, so you can fight them off down here as well. Now going back to the quick slide attack, it's great for an attack, but also for a little movement. For example, going up to this timer to hit it normally takes a lot of time, but if you slide into it instead, can land a hit and continue elsewhere without much of a hitch. While dash attack has an abrupt end, you gotta wait it out before moving on. So this slide helps maintain constant movement, can even shoot while sliding, can even control it slightly, or even do a quick 180 to shoot what you zoom past. You can even plant a remote mine during that slide too. So great to get out of cramped spots while using it to immediately go onto the aggressive right after. And yeah, when you put it all together, it looks and feels pretty hype. All this is fun to use because you get a mix and match, but it takes stamina. So looking at our HUD, these larger blocks on top is health, and the little pips underneath is your stamina. Stomps use stamina, melee attacks use stam, follow-ups too, both the crowd control and the CDG use stamina, slide attacks use stam, quick shots bypass the rules a little, that takes up stamina too. And you'll usually follow that up with a melee attack which uses more stam on top of that. So you're burning through a lot of resources for using that quick shot. So that's the trade-off to balance it. But counters do not use stamina, and dodging does not use it either. Speaking of which, staying prone refills stamina quicker. Even taunting completely refills stamina as well. Yeah, we have a taunt. We have limited heals and you gotta craft them on the spot. Pretty fun when you get it down. Being good at menuing is always fun, no matter what game. And healing not only refills life, but also completely restores your stamina. Then we have throwables. Explosive grenades to of course go boom after a period of time. Then incendiary grenades, which are great to deal damage over time to a cramped crowd instantly. And after throwing these, you have time to do something too. To either dodge back or sides, whatever. Now, as good as explosive and fire can be for crowd control damage, you might think the flash is kinda meh. But nah, flash might not do damage, but it sets up guaranteed CDGs. And on all enemy types too, big or small. Now, an interesting strategy you can do, first set up a max stun for the CDG, but before doing the follow-up, toss a grenade and then to the melee follow-up. Or you can toss a flash to set up that max stun as well, toss down an explosive, then do the melee finisher. Super cool because the iframes on the melee attack stops you from recoiling from the explosive while you do big crowd control plays. Super cool. So yeah, all the throwables are super useful. They're limited items, but when put together, they can lock down groups of enemies with the iframe strat, or to just capitalize on map's layout, filtering enemies in. Speaking of those enemies, the classic zombie. They're slow and fumble about, but don't let them surround you, power numbers and all. Sometimes they have melee weapons. For these, just stun them once, any way you can, to set up an instant kill follow-up. And that melee follow-up can hit nearby enemies too. And of course, they set up easy counters. Firemen. These guys are pretty cool. So they have a hard hat, no headshots or head stomps, but they can be set up for quick shots and all those melee attacks from there. Now they have a tank on their back. Shooting this will have them go boom. Doing some crowd control and of course taking them out instantly. Okay, so when they attack, they'll fling themselves, giving you a small window to shoot the tank if you're ready for it. But remember what we saw earlier when shooting arms and shoulders, they'll turn around. Aha! So shoot that spot to turn them around to expose the tank yourself. Smart game. Then we got Bloodshots. Gotta shoot their chests, but they sidestep a lot and will even leap at you. Can dodge sideways, but if they get you, that's a bit of damage. Of course, we can counter this attack and take them out in one swoop. Can even counter their up close and personal attack, which sets up the iframe turbo trick too. Soldiers with armor plates on them, they block bullets, so can't do body shots, and they're resistant to quick shots too. So only headshots on these guys. And the classic dogs, they usually show up in packs, and of course they are fast and small targets. But it just takes one shot to deal with them. But again, you might miss because of their speed and small size. So you can use a quick shot for sure hit, but use a stamina, so that's the trade-off. Guys with blades who will do a quick swipe at you once near, and sometimes they'll taunt you by licking their knife. But we've played Punch Out. Hit them in the face when they do that and set up an instant kill. Snipers trying to do what they gotta do, but just slide up right up to them. Rocket launchers who'll stay back to ruin your day, but they can hurt nearby enemies too. Armor tanks that'll rush you down can counter this or dodge out the way, but you gotta chip out the armor to expose their squishy insides. And yeah, can even quick swap weapons back and forth, cancelling their end lag and increasing your fire rate. Ever since Contra, man, this kind of tech has always been in shooters. While we're at it, can even swap shoulders to cancel end lag to shoot again as well. Isn't very accurate, but with the shotgun, it can be good for quick crowd control. And that's Resident Evil 6. This is Mercenaries, the game. Multiple characters to pick and choose. Can even unlock costumes for them. And there's quite a few alts. Some being these low poly ones, which are pretty cool. And yeah, these costumes aren't just cosmetic. They actually switch up the loadouts a bit. So you kind of get even more characters in a way. And with these different loadouts, it makes them feel unique because it leads to different strategies, because they will either have pistols for mid-range precision shooting, or maybe they don't. Or get something that's automatic to spray and pray, precision be damned. Or they have shotguns for a little something more up close and personal. Or special weapons like rocket launchers, magnums, or snipers. So these little switch ups affect how you interact with enemies. Oh yeah, there's multiple enemies with their own patterns to learn because they're going to be grouped up with a lot of other goons. And the maps have you learn their layouts, and you'll get a sense of routing for the item placements or areas to give yourself some room to work with. And of course, you can still find red barrels and all that to set up big booms. You can say what you will about the story mode, I get it. The structure was a bit off here and there, but the fact each chapter was some sort of callback to the past games, making 6 feel like this ultimate meetup of the entire franchise in one place was pretty hype. This is a lot of content too in general, and a bunch of characters to play with fun setups. These are positives for me, and it just gives this pretty solid action shooter, just more ways to play it. But when people call this one of the worst Resident Evil games, come on now. You either didn't play Survivor or you really didn't play 6 as it should be. But yeah, the mechanics here are pretty layered, and they can mix and match with one another and can be used in different ways depending on the enemy or the surrounding group. You can focus on countering everything, or constant CDGs, or going for enemies' unique weak points, or shifting your hitbox every moment, or do that throwable iframe strat, or a mix of it all. It's up to you making your own playstyle. It's kinda awesome. So for casual play, I can see why this isn't well received. It's just too much to take in and learn with a single story mode run, and that mode everyone goes to doesn't gradually teach these mechanics either. But for us who knew what was here, we found our home in No Hope Mercenaries mode. For the arcadey fun filled with non-stop action, really letting the combat shine through. Then toss in co-op on top of that for some multiplayer shenanigans. And with all this content and layered gameplay that RE6 provides, it makes it one of the best third-person action shooters to date. You just gotta play for yourself.